Dear brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our program. Today, we will talk about the chaplains and therapists world. Healers of the heart and soul, chaplains and therapists. We have chaplain and therapists among us. Actually, more than one chaplain than the therapist. We have wonderful guests. I would like to introduce them to you. Then we can start our event, inshallah, God willing, Ojalá in Spanish. By the way, Ojalá is coming from inshallah. It's just converted. Dr. Ran is one of the linguistic person among us. He likes to play with the words. We will see that soon. Ran, as I mentioned your name, let me introduce yourself first. He's our first guest today. He has Ph.D, LPC-S, licensed professional counselor supervisor, Diplomate, Pastoral Counseling and Pastoral Education Training with CPSP, U.S. Army and Army National Guard Chaplain. So he has many different hats. If I have other hat, I would show you how can we play different IDs to serve people. Sometimes for example, I use my journalistic approach and sometimes chaplaincy perspective, and sometimes I talk with my clients as a teacher, whatever they need. So Dr. Ran is my supervisor as well in CPE program, my second unit CPE with our friends. Welcome, Dr. Ran.
Thank you.
He preferred to say Turkish way, Ran Hocam. Ran Hocam.
Yes.
So how do you feel when I say Ran Hocam?
You know, my preference is
Abi
just
şu an verdi ama Nake YouTube kanalından farklı bir şekilde verdi.
Yes. Yes, go ahead, please.
My preference is just to be, you know, one of all, and I prefer to go by Ron, but I don't generally use titles except for chaplain. You know, I accept it. If, you know, I understand that you said Hojam means my professor, and that's what I'm here for with the CPE training. So thank you.
I try to introduce you, but you have better statements to introduce your experience, horizon, wisdom, knowledge. Could you share
Sure.
your introduction style with us?
But you know, my caring about people began a long time ago. When I graduated from high school, I was planning to become a minister. As I went into college, I was in a group of people from different religions, mostly Christian backgrounds. Then I committed myself to, at that point, to be a linguist in the jungles of Brazil for the rest of my life, but that didn't work out. During Vietnam, I went in the Navy as a hospital corpsman to learn something about medicine so I could do my part in helping people. When I got out of the Navy, I got my license as a vocational nurse and worked mostly operating room and ICU and ER for several years as I worked my way through school. Then I went in the Army as a chaplain. I got out and did my doctorate in psychology at Texas A&M, and then did the chaplain supervisory training. Because what my heart is to train, to share what God has given me to other people, And my wish is that if I give something to someone else so that they can do a better job than me, then I've succeeded. And so my desire is for people to succeed in finding their dream, fulfilling themselves, and reaching out to help God's people of whatever religion, God's creation. Basically, a basic part of my theology is that God has created each one of us with the seeds of God's character within us, and God wants us to develop these seeds. And our heart is always seeking for a relationship with God. So we fill that up with different things many times. So that's my background. That's why I'm here doing the training with you. I spent almost 16 years working in a psychiatric hospital as chaplain. I've worked in several medical centers. I've been a hospice chaplain. And so with my religious background, with my medical background, and with my psychological background, I just kind of fit as a with the mental hospital. And it was a fulfilling experience. And it was there that I met Yetkin and Latifa, and we formed this relationship. And it's because of Latifa that I'm doing her idea that started the class that you and I are working in. So thank you to Latifa and to Yetkin for connecting with the graduate school.
We would like to thank you, sir, to join us. This is kind of a volunteer. You do it as professional, but still you put too much from your heart. We feel that. That's why I would like to thank you.
Yes, that's where my heart is. Owner, thank you very much. And I feel greatly honored with the privilege of working with all of you at Respect Graduate School. I hope to do it for a while yet, you know, as long as I have strength and the ability to do it. So it's been great. Thank you.
So you shared your wonderful statement regarding God. We are the representatives of God, according to your approach. Yes. So we will talk about it later, but we can start with your story, stone spoon story. What are we doing here? It's explaining in a wonderful way. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. I prefer to have all of our interactions here, but also in a classroom that to me is characterized by, there's an old fable from the Middle Ages, and actually there's a version that shows up in Indian Indian literature. I think in Middle East literature, there's several different versions in the Eastern European literature, but one version of it is about this this bard. A bard is, back in the Middle Ages, a bard was the local newspaper in a sense. They would travel from village to village and town to town and sing songs that were telling the news. So the story is, this bard went to a village and, you know, was talking with people, and you know, that as the sun was going down, he sat down in the middle of the village plaza and he said, "I'm going to make my supper." And they said, "What are you going to make?" He says, "I'm going to make soup." And he built a fire and took a pot out of his pack and set it on the fire. And he said, "You know, but I can't make soup without water. Does anybody have any water that I can use?" Somebody ran off and brought a pot of water, and then he reached in his pack and pulled out a stone. He wiped it off and put it in the water, and people are looking at it and says, "What kind of soup?" "Stone soup." "Well, that sounds interesting." He says, "Yeah, it's really very good, but it would be better if somebody had a carrot we could put in it." So somebody would run off and get a carrot. And what about a cabbage? Somebody else would go get a cabbage, and a hunk of meat would really make it good. And so he would name things. People would go get it and bring it and put it in the soup. And then when the soup was ready, he pulled out his stone, wiped it off, and put it in his packet. Everybody served and enjoyed the soup. And it was very good because everybody put in a piece. They shared together, and it made it rich. If it was just in stone, it wouldn't be anything. And, our interactions together, that's how I see our interactions together. We grow best together when we are each putting in our part. We are more effective when we're each putting in our part and sharing together. And it makes it much more flavorful. So I'm glad we have this opportunity, and for however many people are logged on, for us to share together. Owner had asked me to share something about chaplaincy and about chaplain training that we call CPE, or Clinical Pastoral Education. And then Latifa and Ms. Tubanur will also share some things about therapy.
Yes.
And then we can have some questions and answers, yes?
Yes,
Now,
that's the schedule. So
okay.
I would like to introduce the other guests to continue, if you don't mind.
Do you want to introduce them first before I talk, or?
I would like to introduce them first.
But
Dr. Ram, thank you so much for this beautiful intro.
Yes, we want to listen your stone soup. Actually, that stone soup is very delicious eventually. Why? Because the stones are out, all the useful, fruitful things are in. We will do it now. So Tracy Ward, Sister Latifa, we say Latife, certified behavioral health counselor, Texas Military Department, therapist as well, licensed sex offender treatment provider, and many other things. I will leave to her statements to introduce herself. Please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. So I just want to clarify, I'm a licensed professional counselor supervisor like Ron. As of March 31st, I'm no longer with the Texas Military Department because I have retired from the state of Texas. I've been a therapist for 22 years. And a part of that was I was a licensed professional sex offender treatment provider, which means I worked in probation and parole and in prisons with men who had committed sexual offenses. My career has taken me to probation offices, parole offices, prisons, pain clinics, and then my last stop was the National Guard here, the Texas National Guard headquarters here in Austin. So every time I looked around, it seemed like God put me in offices with cement walls. So I always seemed to be in cinder blocks. I think when I was listening to Ron talk about when he decided to be a minister, I grew up Catholic. I grew up in an Irish Catholic family, a very strict Irish Catholic family, and played with the idea of being a nun. But I always thought it'd been better to be a priest, but that wasn't an option at the Catholic Church. And then I thought I'd be a lawyer, but God had lots different plans. And I think my training to be a therapist started at a very young age with making one mistake after another. And by the grace of God, I've survived my mistakes. And I think those mistakes and surviving them have created a compassion and mercy in me that I can sit with other people who've made mistakes and with less judgment and more mercy. I think if people are interested in therapy or chaplaincy, that this is a beautiful time to think about our field, because one, the field is growing and opening to more spiritual ideas. The therapies, it used to be that those were completely different lanes, and you were not to go into the chaplaincy lane or the ministry lane. And the ministers were not to go into the therapeutic lane, and they're merging now. Another beauty is that we have science to back us. With the MRIs and CAT scans, we can actually see how the brain works. And then another, and that helps because you can help people understand that there's things that are happening within their body and brain that working together can help actually mend or heal. Years ago, they used to think the brain was set, and now they know that it can change. And so that's an exciting topic in our field. But the other thing is what we're doing today through Zoom. There's so many communities that have no access to a chaplain or a therapist. And now this is opening up so that you can do work through Zoom to people who don't have access. So now's a beautiful time, if anybody is interested in chaplaincy or therapy as a therapist, it's a beautiful time to research it and maybe even jump in.
Exactly. So, by the way, with this explanation, need to introduce Tuğba Nur. She is a therapist and the chaplain as well. She has at least two hats. So there are many common points between two professions. Also, according to some people or scholars, not scholars, but scientists, they say the conflicts area. The others is saying cooperation area. So we will make decision in this program. What are they and what is the effect of the people? So Tuğba Nur Hoca is graduate of Hartford Seminary with a master's degree in Islamic Studies and Christian-Muslim Relations and Dialogue, and received the graduate certificate in Islamic chaplaincy. She is the first female Turkish-American chaplain in the USA, and which means in the world. So it is a privilege to listen her. She worked as a university chaplain intern at Cornell University and completed her clinical pastoral education at SUNY Upstate Medical University as a hospital chaplain. She has also been teaching at Counseling Studies Department of Duke University since 2012 and offering courses about Islam. She is also a licensed interpreter. So let me check if she is among us. Yes, let me unmute, yeah. Okay.
Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we are hearing you.
Okay. You know, I just missed the connection, so now I'm able to get back while talking. Sorry about that. So I think you introduced me, and thank you for doing that. Yeah, I think still learning, and there's so much out there to learn and grow. And I feel so grateful that I am here together with our honored guests, and eager to learn from their own life experiences and perspectives, since they have been into this profession for years and working with patients and working with their care receivers or anyone that they come across in their life. And yeah, that's what I can say. I also define myself as a mother who is trying to raise my kids, you know, in the best way that I can. I know that it's a really tough job, but at the same time, it's very rewarding job, and it's challenging, especially in these difficult days. But I mean, it also helps me to grow while doing the multitasking, trying my best to focus, and although it is tough. And I know that there might be so many moms and parents right now who are listening us, and this exchanging ideas and actually life experiences would be a um, inspiration for them as well. And please don't hesitate to share your own experience with us. So it's going to be much more conversational style. And although I am a guest here, I'm going to be from time to time, I would love to address some questions to our honored guests as a moderator, partly helping honor together. We will work on that together and address our questions to our guests, and to make it much more interactive and to get the most out of their own knowledgeable knowledge and wisdom, I can say.
Thank you, Tuba Nur Hoca. We started to talk about two fields already. So could you mention about chaplaincy and therapy fields, common points where they overlap each other? Yeah.
So in my own experience, after I graduated from chaplaincy program, I moved to another state, and I realized that there's this training program in Cornell University, which is would be a wonderful addition to my education. I have been giving seminars about this counseling program already. Started giving, and it's going to be the fourth one, I think, next coming week. Is the name of the program is EARS. EARS means like it's a student-based organization and counseling program which helps on campus, like this, all students and staff who are going through really tough times, or having traumatic experience, anything that they would like to share, they can reach out and easily get counseling. So I think chaplaincy is the profession which gives you the knowledge and wisdom, and also the world view or spirituality, or whatever tradition you are from, or which background you're coming from, which helps you to grow not only in your own tradition, also in other diverse traditions as much as you can, because it gives you the opportunity to learn and take classes from about ethics, history, and political science, and also interfaith studies, and also like Christianity, Judaism, and like any class, any course which is related to building Abrahamic relationships type of courses. It was the opportunity that I took actually when I was in Hartford Seminary, and I met with wonderful people from all different kind of backgrounds, and mingle with them and challenge each other with our questions, and help each other, one another, to grow, learn more, and even in our own faith tradition, because when you challenge one another about each one of your tradition by questions, it helps you to grow also. You realize that there's so much out there to learn, so much out there to go deeper, like a miner, I say all the time, to find the real precious items actually in your own faith tradition, also in other faith traditions, and finding common points, sometimes struggling with different ideas, and sometimes encountering really, this is not my presentation, by the way, but I think someone owner, I think, is sharing just as a background information.
Yeah, instead of seeing the blank view, this is better.
who would love to take the advantage. This was a presentation from one of the previous seminar series of this program. So I think thank you for doing that. So that's why I think it helped me to um, grow in terms of knowledge, also experience, and also, honestly speaking, I have to acknowledge the fact that I come from originally from Turkey and coming from a 99% of Muslim country. It is sometimes really challenging to meet with people and sit with them in person and be challenged by their direct and straightforward questions sometimes as a Muslim female and a person who had some difficult experience in her own country of origin, such as like headscarf ban or some other kind of difficulties, and coming to a country for educational rights to have a much more free, to have your education in the best way in a free country. And I feel so grateful. I feel home, and I feel so grateful to this country in terms of its human rights. And I, by the way, in parentheses, one of my goals is to raise my kids in such a way to give back to this country as a Muslim female chaplain and therapist. I feel really, really in debt to this country. So, and I feel like this home right now. But in 2004, I'm talking about like, excuse me, as a person, as a naive person coming from like culturally and dominantly Muslim, excuse me, country, and meeting with such, finding yourself in such a diverse community, actually sometimes was difficult. But at the same time, as I say all the time, difficult means also challenging means also, I think, when something is challenging, it helps you to grow. And I sometimes look back to the past and realize that this field, this profession helped me to, in many ways, to open my horizon and be more respectful to people's different ideas and be more courageous sometimes, and even challenge my own stereotypical understanding in other faith traditions, about other faith traditions and other identities or racial identities. Honestly speaking, it is in this regard so important. And I believe anyone who is interested in this field, my colleagues will also know better because they have more experience, and I think is going to find themselves growing in every second day, as long as they work hard, as long as they are mingling with people, as long as they have the heart to confront their own stereotypical understandings and challenge their own selves. So that's why chaplains is a very, I think, pretty much rewarding, challenging job, but also such a high need. I'm just talking about the personal, from my personal experience. When it comes to therapy field,
Before we go further, you are a Muslim chaplain in a Christian system, as you see on the screen. So, with the short explanation, how do you feel in this world? You already give us some ideas in your statement, but can you summarize it?
I have pretty much interesting experiences in this regard in hospital setting while doing my clinical pastoral education. I would love to share them, but I mean, please feel free to contribute to our stone soup, my colleagues, please, Dr.
Yes.
Ron, and so I don't want to dominate the
We will
conversation.
come to you again. So let us continue with Dr. Ron. He is the most experienced person and the scholar and master chaplain among us. We are learning from him too much usable information. We can apply them in our field to be successful chaplain. So, Dr. Ron, are you still over there?
I'm here.
Yes,
I like your humor sense as well. He always dress his classes with the humor. I believe it works even in our visits to patients or the soldiers, airmen, students in university settings, or inmates in the jail. So can you tell us about the humor sense relation with the chaplaincy? How do you use this sense? It is naturally, or you do something intentionally?
Oh, well, I think the humor just pops out of me, and sometimes it pops out in a wrong way, unfortunately. There sometimes I've meant to say something humorous and it comes out offensive to someone else. But you know, Gordon Allport, who was the first really personality psychologist in the United States, said that we use humor and religion in our life to address the same things. Those are the things that threaten us. We use religion to lift them up, to get help, and humor to put them down so they're not quite so threatening. So they really go together. And when you think of it, the word humor is related to the word human, which is related to the word humus from the earth. And so humor is a part of us. When we allow the real part of us come out, there's a humor that comes out with it. And so, you know, I try to find ways to use appropriate humor. Sometimes it's just to lift up a spirit, to let someone smile. Sometimes it's to address a situation so that we find it's not quite so threatening. Then sometimes it's in conjunction with our spiritual thoughts and direction to lift up our lives.
You know, Dr. Ran, my father is a wise man like you. He used wisdom with his speeches in a way, a wonderful humor sense way. But he says that humor has to be an amount of salt in the food. If you put too much, you will spoil it.
Yes.
The life is actually art of balance. Life
Right.
is. That's why we put properly everything, like your stone soup story. Everything has some amount in it, like carrot, cabbage, or tomatoes. So then this gives us the taste with wonderful preparation. Also, another simile or the story I want to share. I was shadowing with the Cuban Catholic chaplain in my intern chaplain process at Seton Hospital. He was telling me his father's sayings. These are wonderful statements. I got benefit from them. Also, I was sharing my father's. So one day when I observe his profession, and I immediately told that representative story. Actually, this is just a simile of the chaplains, maybe the therapist. I put that idea for the chaplains and the imams, or pastors, rabbis, you can say. What is the difference between these two groups? Your stone spoon story is related with the same simile. I told him that imams or rabbis, chaplains, even preachers, wise, they are like the good cook as well as chaplains. So what is the difference between two good cooks group? Imam has own ingredients, all kind of vegetables, the materials of the food, like fish, meat, even the dessert. Then he prepare open buffet table for the audience, for the guests, let's say, congregation. But chaplain never has this kind of material in his hand, in his basket or the bag. He always looking for the guests' property, what they have. Then dig them or ask their background, knowledge, then use those material to cook wonderful food, prepare a nice table to them. When I told this simile, he was surprised and he liked that. This is exactly explaining our situation between two fields. In this point, I want to ask Sister Latifa, for the therapist, as the therapist, let's say, is this the same? You have your own material to prepare food, or you are looking for the clients or the patient's background or knowledge, experience, wisdom?
Both. So depending on where the client is. So when the client comes into me, I ask them usually within the hour of getting to know them, what would you like to heal? And then from that, then we travel together, and sometimes I will bring in things that from the cookbook, and then other times they're my teacher and showing me a new way and a new path. But I don't have a set recipe for each one. It's really depends on where they are in their life and what they're up against. And most clients, if not all, will bring something so new to the stone soup. I mean, everyone's so unique and has had their own journey that really my best teachers throughout my 22 years have been my clients.
Exactly, I agree with that. Yeah, that's
Yes.
a wonderful point. Yeah.
Tubanur Hoca, you are representing two sides, both sides. What do you add on them?
As Sister Latifa mentioned, actually, I agree. As I say, after getting trained in counseling, you, as a beginner, you realize that there's so much to learn, and the more you do this counseling with working, the more you work with people, the more you understand that human beings is such a wonderfully created and such a mysterious and such a profound creation of God, and the feelings, our heart, our soul, and our ego works in such a interesting ways that, I mean, I think in this journey to learn human being and the psychology of a human being and the profoundness of human being, is there's no end to this journey. And because you know, we have a famous saying in our tradition, God says that I am not able to fit into the heavens and earth and none. I am a I am God, but I can fit into my believer's heart. So even this saying from my tradition explains that human being's heart has this such a depth, such a like profoundness, such a enormous space, if I can explain it in the right way, I don't know, but I mean that God can fit into this place, which is kind of also explaining the beautiful connection bond that a human being can create with the creator, with his or her creator. So I mean, my tradition helps me to work my clients as a counselor and nourishes, and I believe this for all traditions, because as a Muslim, I believe that Christianity, Judaism, even Buddhism, for some people, because there are some stereotypical approaches to Buddhism, I know that in my own circles, but I believe that they're originally heavenly traditions, and Abrahamic faiths are already, Judaism and Christianity are Abrahamic origin, has Abrahamic origins, but I also believe that Buddhism, being such a old tradition and has such a profound again, the wisdom that it gives you, etc. Originally, I believe that they're heavenly, they're divine. That's why I believe this, not only my tradition, all traditions help a counselor or a therapist or a chaplain, you know, to understand being like to understand themselves better, and so to be able to give back to their clients when they are doing the counseling session. But there's no end to this journey, I believe, because and how to handle their feelings, because as a chaplain, as a caregiver, when they come to you, when they cry, when they have trauma, I realized that without the therapy education before, although I got some classes about it, some, you know, in the seminary, there were some opportunities to take some classes about it, but it's never enough. It's never enough because it's such a complicated thing to handle. I don't know if this is the right word. Please correct me if I'm wrong, my colleagues. To handle the feelings or address a human being's needs, that I think it's very important to know the tools and have the techniques to be able to apply the techniques, and have the training, and also be aware that there's no end to this training or learning or this journey. And I'm really curious about my colleagues' experiences. If they would like to share their particularly unique experiences that they want to share, which help them grow, which help them understand a new point or a turning point in their life, I would be really grateful.
So when we talk about the counseling, there are different types of counseling in the counseling skills techniques. Mm-hmm. So individual, couples or marriage counseling, or family mm-hmm. counseling, even mm-hmm. group counseling. So for the chaplains and the therapists, the counseling styles are the same. They approach and they use the techniques with the same way or different. You can answer as a therapist and a chaplain. Then maybe Sister Latifa and Dr. Ran can contribute on it. Your voice is okay. Sister Latifa, what do you think? You use the same technique with the chaplains?
Oh, the same technique as a chaplain and a therapist?
Yes, yes.
So I would say for me, techniques are not my strength. My strength tends to be more from the Latif. You know, really, my sheikh used to say that your senses gave you the worst witnessing. So, you know, I try to be with the person in the room. I try to use my nervous system and to keep very, very calm, so it calms, because there's science now saying that when two people are in the same room, you can actually help another person stay calm by keeping your nervous system calm. So I do that with both when I'm as a chaplain intern or as a therapist. But I try very hard to listen with my heart to what they're deeply in need of. And sometimes I too, like Tuba, am a mother, and it's probably my favorite role that I've played in my years, a wife and a mother and a sister. But so many people come in and have come from homes that were neglectful maybe or abusive. And so just to have a presence, whether it's a man and a father figure or a woman and a mother figure, just to feel safe and to be able to talk from deep places. You know, I spend a lot of time in conversation with God asking him, what would you have me ask? What would you have me do? Each step of the way. And that's proven to be much more successful than me trying to figure out techniques. That's just how I work. And that's over the years learning that.
Thank you. Dr. Ron, what do you like to add?
You know, to me, the important thing is to connect with the other person's heart, spirit. You know, I don't know where we can separate the spirit from the emotional and the psychological. They're so tightly intertwined. But so for me, the important thing is to connect with their heart. That's why listening is so important. We have to hear their story, hear where they are, and underneath the listening of the story, we hear what their heart is crying out. Now, you know, in a way, we have to learn some techniques, some theories and techniques, and that's a foundation. But you've probably heard the saying, well, when you go out, you know, to build a building and you take a hammer, and if that's the only thing you know how to use, then everything is a nail. Well, what about the screw? What about the wooden peg? You see, when we can learn the techniques, and they're just techniques. We have to practice them until they become a skill. But even when they become a skill, as we work with them, as we look at how our heart is looking, then after a while, the hope is that it becomes a part of us. So I think of a mechanic that doesn't have to look at his tool chest and say, oh, which tool do I have to use? But the mechanic that has such a skill that he looks at the engine or whatever he's working on and reaches over and automatically picks up the right tool. You see, because it's become a part of them. But the part of them is to interact with us. The part of them is to interact with the person that we're working with, rather than, well, here's a disease, here's a condition, here's a situation. Well, what's the person? Where's the person underneath all these statements and underneath all the hurt? Where's the person, you see? And so using the tools to interact with the person. Yes, in counseling, sometimes it's a different presentation. So you have to use a different part, a different tool in a sense. But then as a chaplain, you're in, it's a different situation. Also, all of it can be used together. Yes, there's separate situations. If I'm talking with Latife, it's one way. If I'm talking with you, it's another way. Remember what we said about personality? It's defined as the mask that we put on in the situation that we're in. If we're in a counseling situation, we still need to use that heart. If we're in a chaplain situation, we need to use that heart. And it's a different mask we put on. Now, remember the word therapy means healing.
Yeah.
And chaplains are into healing. When we incorporate the spiritual into the counseling, that's treating the person holistically. If we say, I can't address their religious or spiritual, then we're not treating them holistically. And the movement in chaplaincy and medicine is to treat holistically. Go ahead, there was a question.
healing is among the 5 crucial functions of pastoral care. Yeah. So we have 4 more: sustaining, guiding, reconciling, and nurturing. So what's your favorite one in your experience, profession, during your life?
You know, this is the way I look at it. Imagine that you're taking a hike, okay? You're out on this trail somewhere hiking, and Latifah likes to do that. Imagine you're taking this hike and you see someone on the trail that has fallen down, is hurt, and has been there a while, okay? So you want to help the person. Maybe you help the person stand up. And that's what sustain means, is to really help them stand in that position. It comes from the Greek word to stand, okay? Well, then the next thing you do is you pull out a water bottle and give the person some water because they need it. That's nurturing. As you help them down the trail, that's guiding. When you bring them back to their family, that's reconciliation, and the family takes them to the hospital to get healed, right? How can you separate them? They're all tied together, but they're at the same time, they're separate. Just kind of like, hey, you know, your left hand is separate from your right hand, but it's also connected. And if your left hand decides, I don't want to be a part of this body, and it disconnects itself and walks away, it's not going to be long before it dies. If we just focus on one, it kind of dies out, doesn't it? That's how it is with the tools and the training and the considerations of the heart and the emotions. Okay.
The patient who is the audience, we can put or emphasize, underline some of those crucial functions. It depends on the case.
Yes.
Then others will continue, will follow it.
Repeat the question.
Yeah, this is the additional info from my perspective as a chaplain. For example, I prefer to use the first guidance as a guide of the person over there. Then the other functions will continue it automatically. Healing, sustaining, and also nurturing. If he is far away from God, his creator, reconciling process will start. It depends on the patient, I believe.
It's fun. I remember this. Thank you, Dr. Ran and Honor, for the input. All of these remind me one of my supervisors, one of her sayings during pastoral care education. By the way, for the newcomers who has no background information about what we are talking about chaplaincy and pastoral care, clinical pastoral care education, which is part of being to become a chaplain. This is part of your training. It's an internship in a hospital setting that you meet with patients and work with them as a group, as a team, with a diverse team from different backgrounds and traditions, and with the supervisor's guidance, and meet with patients and try to learn, grow, also learn about yourself, understand yourself so you understand better others. So my supervisor one time told me that, there are each cases, and I remember visiting each patient's room, and each day is another day, and I don't know what to expect. And depending on my own psychology, I remember sometimes I was struggling with my own feelings to go into the room and meet with people. Sometimes I don't feel ready, I don't want to, but